This wasn't supposed to be the year. No playoffs, no noise, no chance. And yet here we are, division champs. Packers beaten twice, wants to end their season. One overtime field goal away from the NFC Championship game. This wasn't just a season. It was a statement, a reminder of who the Chicago Bears are and what this city sounds like when belief turns real. The final page of this chapter is turning, but don't get it twisted. The book is wide open. The future is loaded, and the best Bears football, it's still ahead. Let's relive a season we'll be talking about for a long, long time. I'm Rob Schwarz with Bear Goggles On. With me tonight is my good friend and co-host, Justin Noa. This is the House Huddle, where we feed on the tears of Packers fans.
All right. We love having you guys here. House Huddlers, please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us what your favorite memory of the Bears season was, because I'm sure there are plenty to choose from. So Rob, I had a little bit time to kind of digest the game, and my initial thoughts, like in the moment, was like, dang, they could have won that. But the longer that has passed, I'm like, no. They should have won that game. You kind of outplayed them in my mind. And if you look at some of the stuff that happened early in the game, kind of similar to, there was a lot of actual parallels, I think, to the Green Bay game. I don't know if we'll end up talking about both in what we talk about. But early on in the game, some of the decision-making by Johnson and just the tone of the way the game was going, it was like you didn't think you were going to be in it as much as you actually were. And I think you really saw it with the defense coming alive in this game. And I didn't hear anyone talk about Stafford's completion percentage, but it was below 50%. They played very well. I don't know if that was all the weather. There were a few times I was like, if this was in a dome, that might have been different. But defense really stepped up. I want to talk more detail about that a little later, but what was your just overall feel?
Yeah, so I was at the game.
That's right.
It was insane. I didn't have a voice. I mean, we're recording here way after the hype, the excitement, the sadness, the frustration, all those feelings, that mixed bag. And I think that's why, Justin, you're saying, like, look, now I'm looking at it. We had this, like, this was that close. They should have won. That day it didn't feel that way. Yes, it did, but at the same time, it was just like, oh my gosh, the season was amazing. That game was amazing. Everything that happened, the touchdown to Cole Kmet, just to even put it into overtime. The stadium was insane. No one sat down, like, at all. The guy who was sitting next to me, 69 years old, cancer fighter, he didn't even sit down for most of the game. Literally dealing with cancer, with chemo and radio. Like, he's literally standing for probably 90% of the game. My brother-in-law came with us. He was one of those fools that had his shirt off. I joined him for a little bit. And I was like, yeah, you're dumb. I'm putting my clothes back on. It was so much fun. The atmosphere, it's probably one of the best games I've ever been to. Comparably, actually, the other game that I can recall being that much fun, that atmosphere, was actually when the Bears played the Rams. That would have been 2018. And they won. I want to say it was like 12-6 or 12-9. I think it was Jared Goff was still with them. And I think he threw like 4 or 5 interceptions that game. It was insane. But again, another situation where it was like no one sat down in that game. So it just was like the embodiment of what this season has been. Started off really well, actually, which was, they drove down right away. I thought, you compared it to the Packers game, right? Like, they drove down, couldn't convert in the red zone, ended up having to take 3. This time they went for it on 4th, weren't able to get a touchdown. Roma Dunze, sorry, buddy, but you got to hold on to that ball. That could have been the difference maker right there, to be honest. And then things kind of just fell off a little bit, and then it picked back up, and then you got the cardiac Bears, that fourth quarter comeback, 4th and 4, and Caleb Williams from 14 yards, but threw it for over 50. It was insane.
Well, you mentioned how similar it kind of felt, but I will say one thing. All season long, people talked about turnover differential as if, one, that the Bears had no skill in that, and two, that they were purely dependent on that. And I just want to point out that in the Packers game and in this Rams game, I believe over the course of those two games, they forced 5 fumbles and recovered 0 of them. They were -3 in the turnover differential, and I still feel they should have and could have won that game against the Rams. So it was kind of a different formula in how they did it. And one guy, I guess later we can quickly do a little, even though they lost, big game. There were some game balls I think that still should have went out. Do you give those out in losses?
You don't, but there were some guys that deserved them. There were. Joe Thuney deserved a game ball. Like, look, Jared Verse is a freaking beast, right? Like, I love Rome Odunze. I would be ecstatic right now. If you knew you were getting Luther Burden and still had DJ Moore, I would have been 100% on board of going with Jared Verse over Rome Odunze. And I love Rome Odunze. But Joe Thuney did a hell of a job playing left tackle against that defensive front. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but he did a hell of a job. And then Jordan McFadden.
Hey, give McFadden one too then.
I mean, we had like 3 snaps all year this year. And like he did a really good job. I mean, you didn't hear his name being called consistently. I know it was a little bit more difficult for me. I have not gone back and actually watched the game broadcast footage. So it's a little bit difficult for me to like see the details being at the stadium, but he stood out. Jaquan Brisker stood out to me. And I said this on Twitter and people confirmed it. Yes, it wasn't just what I was seeing at the stadium. He was everywhere and playing the way that this defense was meant to be played. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Kyler Gordon was there playing healthy, because it allows Brisker to play more free, right? Like he's able to play the position that he's supposed to be able to play. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. We'll talk about it a little bit when we get to what happens now, but he's a guy now going to be a free agent.
There were parts of the season where people were talking about Dennis Allen, the genius. And then there were times in the season more recently where people were like, this dude sucks. And almost like, should they even bring him back next year? But you got to see what it looks like with Kyler Gordon, with Brisker playing the way he was. And that's still, obviously you don't have TJ Edwards, but, there's a lot of things that really showed in this game that have me excited about the future. But it obviously starts with Caleb Williams.
And Sean McVay, after the game, you got him mic'd up, literally went up to Dennis Allen and said, man, you kicked our ass. So,
yeah, they did. I mean, the stats, Nacua was pretty much shut down. Like, if you told me Nacua was going to have 5 catches for 56 yards, which is what I think he ended up with, and no touchdowns, I'm like, okay, Bears won. You tell me Stafford's going to complete less than half his passes, I'll tell you the Bears won, and they didn't, as we know. But
it was missed opportunities. What they were 1 for 4 on 4th down, right? Multiple red zone trips where they didn't score. And I know some people are, upset that they didn't take the points at certain times, but that's not who Ben Johnson is. And I'm okay with it. That's the coach that we wanted. And there's times where you take it. I don't think this was the time. I think when you get to that point in this cold weather game, you got to just punch it in. And it was literally just a couple blocks here or there and things go your way. A catch here or there and things go your way.
Well, and I'm wondering if they're one season away from that's your mentality, but you're also converting at a much higher rate. Because there was like 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s and all these convertible times where you weren't able to exert your will. You didn't have the identity of, we're going to get this. And like, even I think it was in overtime when it was 4th and 1 and Caleb did a quarterback sneak, but it wasn't traditional. He had to move to the side and go, and hey,
it was almost like a delay.
Yeah, he converted it, so it works. So maybe that's your thing. But I'll just quickly say I've been asking for it for last few games here, going back to the 49ers game. In those situations, I feel like why not roll Caleb out and let him have the option to run or complete a pass? Then you're giving the defense a lot to have to worry about. And I just feel like some of the plays they've been running in those situations aren't quite it. Of course, when it works and they still win, like in the Packers game, who cares? When your season ends, it does make you kind of say the woulda, coulda, shoulda game. And like you said, all the way back to Odunze catches that ball in the first drive, the whole game might just go differently. Because the defense did come and play, and maybe they would have right away with a 7-0 lead as opposed to, damn, no points. Here we go.
Right. Before we move on to Caleb Williams, I just wanted to get your thoughts. I am okay with them not going for 2 to end the game. I think going to overtime was the right call. I just felt like, you just kind of laid it out there. They were struggling in that short yardage stuff. And Ben Johnson said the same thing in his press conference, right? Like they were struggling and, it was on the table. It was a thought, but they just weren't able to convert those short yardage ones. And they felt like they weren't going to be able to do it. And then the game was over, but they kind of had the momentum going, right? With the Kmet touchdown. I think it was the right call and they were driving. What frustrates me the most about the interception to Curl is not so much. I mean, it bothers me that DJ Moore didn't flatten out and that they weren't on the same page. And I do think that, that catch should have been made by DJ Moore. And if not, you're at least going to be put yourself in a position where the interception doesn't happen. But it was 2nd and 8, and you didn't need to throw the ball 15 yards. But it could have been the dagger. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, you got to be aggressive at times.
Yeah, that play frustrated me. And here's the other thing. And you were at the game. I'm at home watching it with my son. And what was so frustrating was, of every play they ran that game, that was probably the cleanest pocket he had the entire game. He looked so under control. And as you're watching on TV, you just see him release in a perfectly clean pocket. So the assumption is this is going to go right to somebody and seal the game. And then it was like, what? Yeah. And then you get to see the back angle. And then, was DJ even expecting the ball or looking or breaking the route or like whatever he was running, it wasn't going to work. And so it goes back to like, was that the right play call in the moment? Like, you didn't need as much as you were going for. Granted, if you convert it, you basically lock up the game. So as for going for 2, I wanted to want them to do it, but I knew they shouldn't for all the reasons you pointed out. And so you could have won it in overtime. I love that they had the ball second. The defense stepped up and did their job. It's just unfortunate how it ended. And of all season long, Caleb, we talked about his high touchdown to interception ratio. And in the playoffs, it really kind of flipped a bit. He threw quite a few picks, but so many of them are on 4th downs that you either aren't going for, or it's just like, hey, I got to try something. But that one, it wasn't that. You know what I mean? He had time to throw. It was 2nd and 8. You didn't need what you were going for. So for that to be the way it goes out, that does kind of leave a sour taste in my mouth, just because I don't feel that's how Caleb's season should be remembered, nor will it be. Right. I think we're going to remember the 4th and 8. We're going to remember the 4th and 4 from the 14 that he threw from the 40, which I've only seen in Tecmo Bowl running back that far. But Caleb, fantastic in my opinion, just at an entertainment point, but also in just how far he was able to carry this team. Not alone. I mean, a lot of people contributed, of course, but it all comes down to the quarterback. So what do you got on Caleb?
Yeah, so real quick, this thing right here, good, better, bust. I put this here specifically because the Sun Times had this as their cover page. And I'm like, what are you doing? Right? Like, and I know they're more talking bust of a season, I think, than they were Caleb Williams, but they put stats specifically on the fact that he had 5 interceptions or 3 interceptions in this game. Look, you mentioned it. One of those interceptions was a 4th down. Had they not intercepted the ball, they would have been 30 yards closer to their end zone. Like, it was intercepted.
Green Bay game too.
Yeah.
Same
so
deal.
I want to say out of the 5, 3 of them were on 4th down. Like, that's when you put up a prayer and hope that your guy comes down with it, or you get a PI or a defensive holding. Like, it's okay for those things to happen in those situations, and context matters. But when you stat watch, those things are just there for the Green Bay fans to try to point out blah, 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 blah. But guess what? Your guy wasn't even there. He was on the bench. So shut up, Packers fans. Look, Nick Wright was on the Colin Cowherd show, and I'm not a big Colin Cowherd fan at all, but he has been a little bit more grounded lately when it comes to Caleb Williams. But Nick Wright said it on the show. Caleb Williams has 4 traits that you can't teach, right? He's got arm strength. He's got escapability, right? Just pure athleticism. He has calmness when there's just chaos, right? And he's got creativity. So those 4 things, like, you cannot teach that. And just based off that alone, I understand everyone's going to point to the 50% completion or below 60% completion percentage. Yes, it's important for him to improve on that. He said it in his end of year press conference. Like, look, I'm going to work on my footwork. I'm going to work on my accuracy. I believe he's going to. He said he was going to work on his sacks, and he basically cut that in less than half this season. Now, it helps that you get an offensive line that can actually block, but most of those guys, I mean, all three of those guys are going to be back. All four of those guys are going to be back. You got to figure out your left tackle position with Ozzie Trapillo. But Caleb Williams is a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. Like, he's top 10. Whatever the stats say, I don't even care. He is a top 10 quarterback. If you are going to give me if I could go out and pick a player from one of the 32 teams, there are only a handful of guys that I would say, yeah, I'm going to take him over Caleb Williams in this situation.
So I'm going to have to do a whole research project and use this for an off-season video. We'll tease a few things for the off-season.
This is just an overview, high level.
But with Caleb Williams, something that has been entering my mind here is the completion percentage conversation again and again and again. And we've talked about it in ways, two glaring things that I must continue to point out with what I'm going to add on next is, like you said, avoiding sacks, and some of that is throwaways, which is the right play to do for so many reasons. And the Bears being one of the highest in the league in drops. But there's a statistic of expected completion percentage. And just quickly, I'm just going to tell you, Caleb Williams' expected completion percentage was 65. His actual was 58.1, which means he was minus 6.9% from what he was expected, his completion percentage. That minus 6.9 is the second highest in the league, and it is not, I mean, he's up there. It's really, really bad. Minus 7. On the flip side, Drake May, who might, be runner-up in the MVP, hey, he might win it, but I'm thinking runner-up in the MVP.
Well, now no Bo Nix. I mean, they better not lose that game.
Oh, well, I'm just talking MVP for the season. He was plus 9.1 over his expected completion percentage. But I've been having a long conversation with my son about this. I think this early in a career and those numbers being that radical makes me feel like it comes back the next year, or likely, especially in Williams' case, this is going to be what he's going to focus on. He's going to be in year 2 of a complicated system that clearly got better as the season went on. I think people are forgetting that. And so we were on the hype train coming into this season. Statistically, we were off, but I don't think we were off in saying that this dude is the real dude. And that's why I thought this said good, better, bust, is let's get rid of that bust talk. The fact that preseason in his draft class, which is turning out to be a really good draft class, by the way, that he was the only one labeled as a potential bust sounded insane to me. And just what he did this year alone, stacked on what he did last year in a very unsuccessful, situation, he already has shown me that he's a guy that you want to put your stock in and your faith in. And now that's the second thing I thought, Rob. Right when the game was over, I was like, damn, they could have won that. And then I go, the window is officially open. Here we go. Because like you said, I don't think anyone thought they were going to get as far as they did. Now, that being said, you did. You could have gone further. That's upsetting. But the true window is now. And it started to excite me what type of things they're going to have to do. Because we called out a few playmakers on defense. You need a lot more so that it's consistent. And then the sky's the limit for this team.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you segued into that kind of perfectly. I don't really have anything else to add other than the wow throws by Caleb Williams this year are like some of the best I have ever seen in my lifetime. And I've seen some video clips of Aaron Rodgers doing some similar things. And guess what? I'm glad that Caleb Williams is doing similar things to him, because that's the guy that he's always wanted to emulate from a quarterback perspective. So for the fact that he's doing what Aaron Rodgers did, hell yes. Hell yes. And I know that the Packers only got one Super Bowl out of him. That's because they're fucking incompetent. I am hoping that the Chicago Bears are going to be not as incompetent now that we're turning the page into a new chapter. right, of a new book that just opened, right? We closed the book prior to 2025. That everything that happened prior to 2025, you guys can just consider that dead and gone, right? Now it's a new book. This is what's going to happen with the Ryan Poles and the Ben Johnson era and the Caleb Williams era, because he's not going anywhere. And this is why the window is open. Look, he's still on a rookie deal. So that's important, right? Because we're seeing that more and more often with Super Bowl winners, is that the quarterbacks are on rookie deals. They weren't supposed to be this good. I don't want to hear, and look, for any Packers fan watching this, I doubt that there are many, if any at all. Any Packer, maybe I'll clip it and then we'll get some interaction that way. But for any Packers fan watching this, oh, now you're going to see the regression because you're going to go from, that last place schedule to a first place schedule. Do you understand it impacts 2 games? Two games. And as of right now, because strength of schedule, and I talked about this in the preseason, I don't know if you recall, I think strength of schedule is just a stupid thing for anyone to even put out there, because at the beginning of the year, the Chicago Bears had the second hardest strength of schedule going into the season with a worst place schedule, right? Or a last place schedule release, right? So second highest strength of schedule that they were going to go up against. I think the Lions were number 1, if I recall. Why? Because they're in the same division. Makes sense. I think the Packers and the Vikings were pretty high up there as well. But as of right now, if you were to go back and look at what these teams are and you look to the future of going into next season, because that's how they base it, is, well, what was the winning percentages of those teams? It's actually higher now because it adjusts throughout the season and it dropped. So now it's gone back up again going into next season. Or now it's lower going into next season than it was going into this season. So it's just a bunch of malarkey. You play the games for a reason. The 7 fourth quarter comebacks, that's probably not going to continuously happen. But here is what is going to happen.
Won't be behind as much.
Right. You are now going into year 2. You have your offense. Tell me who on offense isn't going to be here.
DJ Moore.
And honestly, he might be. I honestly think
he might be, but there's some off-season content, guys. That's a tease.
We will discuss that. 100%. We will discuss that. But even if he's not, I'm fine with Luther Burden and Rome Odunze and Jade Walker, right? Who showed something towards the end. And Colston Loveland, who honestly, I do think that was a big thing. I didn't realize, and I didn't see when he actually came out of the game, but he wasn't in at the end, right? Because
it hurt them at the end. I saw the play and it looked bad. And then the way he was leaving the field, I was like, that's not good. And then he just never came back. So I'm sure.
Was he then? So he wasn't in for the last play when they threw the interception. Was he even in for most of overtime? I see. I don't know.
I don't think so. I forget exactly when it was. Yeah. Dang, I lost my thought on something.
Sorry. Okay, so offensive line, you got 4 out of your 5 starters are going to be back next year, right? Your running backs are going to be exactly the same unless you decide to cut DeAndre Swift, but he had his best season ever, and I don't think Ben Johnson was disappointed in his performance this year. Kyle Monungai's not going anywhere. Maybe you add a running back at some point to that roster because Roschon Johnson was not really available.
So
what am I missing here? That offense is going to improve.
We will have a lot of off-season content where we do various things, including mock this, mock that, mock free agency, mock off-season, mock draft.
Oh, it's so much fun.
But here's the thing. There's a lot of ways to build, but you mentioned a big important factor, which is you still have Caleb Williams on his rookie deal. I actually believe that with Ben Johnson, with Caleb Williams, with the way this team performed this year, there are people who are considered like ring chasers that might think this is a destination to come because you have so much already built and ready to go. And I think, last year's draft was fantastic. It's going to be hard to ever have a draft like that. But the idea going in should be now let's have that same draft on the defensive side of the ball. I do think you're going to want to bring in some key free agents. Maybe there are some trades. We already talked, if DJ Moore does go anyway, that's going to be anywhere. That's going to be via trade. But are you looking to bring someone in via trade? But all of these things being said, you still want to get the next guy in. Joe Thuney's getting up there in age. You want to have, I wouldn't be mad if in the 3rd or 4th round, you're selecting guys to fill in and learn behind some of these guys. because when you do have to start paying people like Caleb Williams, like Roma Dunze, like Luther Burden, decisions have to be made. But if you already have kept going with the draft, this is why they say you still want to build through the draft. This could be a long time open window. It's at least 2-3 years, but you could sustain it a lot longer. You could be one of those type of teams if you 100%. Play it right.
Before we transition to the what happens now, because I think you touched on a few things there, and we're not going to dive deep into the what happens now. This is just kind of like an overview of where things need to go over the next, week or few months, just so you guys know what, the timeline looks like. But to answer the question of the graphic, Super Bowl contenders, the expectations are there. 2026, it's a Super Bowl year. They had a chance this year, the way that things played out. The expectations are Super Bowl. Like when we start talking again in this offseason, there is no reason for you, Bob, myself, to not put them at 10 plus wins and a Super Bowl contender, right? Like they're just not.
Well, it's taking the North and not giving it back. Because to win the Super Bowl, your best path to winning the Super Bowl is to win your division.
100%. You
get at least one home game. If you're the top division winner, you get the bye. I mean, I think with Seattle, you're already seeing how their path, they beat up a team that just lost one of their best players, and next thing you know, they're already in the title game and get to host it. So, obviously, I think those are where you set your sights. But you mentioned, 7 come from behind, 7 wins when you were trailing after the 2-minute warning. That's a tough way to keep that going. I will point out that one of those was Cincinnati, where I think you actually blew the game more than you came back. But I think the key will be putting it all together. If Caleb works as hard on the little things that might make that completion percentage creep up, maybe you're not coming from behind, because the explosives were there. The amazing plays are there. Now, if you start making the easy checkdowns and the, routine plays, look out. Now, if you have a healthy Kyler Gordon, I don't know if that's something he can work on in the offseason, but if you're drafting the next version of him or whomever, then I think you're building something that, I don't care what strength of schedule anyone says, they're not going to want to play the Bears.
And you mentioned it, and I'm just going to briefly touch on it, is the defensive line struggled. However, it's a lot to do with the fact that they were not winning games throughout most of the game, right? So, defenses have it a lot easier when other teams are having to throw the ball and you're making one-dimensional, and that's usually when a lot of these sacks happen. Montez Sweat had an actual decent year. I'm not, super down on him. What happens now is that's the one area that does need to improve, and I think you brought it up the right way, is you got to build through the draft. You got to find a difference maker on that defensive line, whether it's at the tackle position, whether it's another defensive end, whether it's through the draft or free agency. There's a lot to happen. Just to give you guys a quick rundown, okay, we got some time. Obviously, the Super Bowl is not going to be for a bit, but even before the Super Bowl happens, we got the East and West Shrine game that I'll be watching. The Senior Bowl, all of those take place January 27th for the East-West Shrine game. Senior Bowl is January 31st. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Super Bowl is February 8th. Then you move into March. March is going to be when, obviously, free agency starts. So the new league year will be March 11th. Deadline is March 3rd for franchise tags. I don't really foresee anything happening there for the Chicago Bears, but I don't know, maybe. But March 11th will be when the new year begins, and that's when free agency will officially start. There will be obviously that 2 days ahead of tampering period. And then we get into the draft, and we're going to be talking April, in for the draft. I think it's in Pittsburgh this year. So that's an interesting thing there, but a lot to talk about.
One thing I just want to put in people's head, or just be on the record for saying, I believe the Bears, you'll know better than I will, Rob, but I believe the Bears are negative 4.9 million on the cap right now. And that still puts them at the 12th best situation going into the offseason. So don't freak out when you hear that number. Teams have ways, whether it's restructuring deals, cutting players, all sorts of things. And we'll get into it here on the House Huddle. But you have ways to manipulate the cap, to recalculate the cap, and teams are very good at it. So where the Bears are at, I actually think in their division, they might be the second best situation in terms of cap, but I'd have to look into that. But a lot of exciting stuff in the offseason. Normally, Rob, we've already gone through so much of it by now, but because this season was actually successful, those dates you said, I was like, really? Those are coming up already?
Yeah,
we've been talking about these things since November.
Prior to Bob joining, I think Justin and I were doing full-on off-season stuff like as early as like end of November usually. So this has been a nice change of pace. So the Chicago Bears have the most salary cap space in the NFC North.
There we go.
They're 21st. Green Bay's 23rd, Detroit's 24th, and the Vikings are currently 30th at a negative $37 million below the cap or over the cap.
Yeah.
So,
and Bears are what, 5 over or 4 points something?
A little over 3.
Okay.
A little over 3. Now, I don't know. They did sign some people, some future reserve contracts today, so maybe that might have played a little bit of in that too, but I'm not exactly sure where that stands. It's always just the top 51 players out of the top 53. But again, we will dive into that hardcore. My draft stuff is going to be being pushed much more now. I haven't been diving into it as early as I have in the past. So I got to get caught up. Well, I got to get caught up because I got to get ready for that combine here in February. So it's been a fun season. I mean, that's the whole gist of this whole conversation is this has been a fun season as somebody, Justin and Bob and I are all around the same age. We were too young to really enjoy the 1985 Super Bowl. We had our 2006 run with the Lovie Smith era, and that was like my prime Chicago Bears memories outside of the 2018 Matt Nagy situation, which we've expanded on a billion times. This is not the same situation.
This wasn't that.
Not that. Not even close. This ranks right there with the 2006 season for me. Right there, because there were so many core memories from that season as well. And then now for this season to be the same way, it's fun. And now I have 2 boys who are of the age, and my oldest is becoming a Bears fan. Still can't get my other one. He's fucking Eagles fan, but better than a Packers fan. So
yeah, it was a fun season. So many memories and things like that. And that's actually the sad thing, because we're talking the future looks so bright, but that particular team, that 53 guys or 70 or whatever it ends up being when you throw in all the practice squad guys, it will be very different by next year. I mean, I think they have 23 or 25, something like that, guys who are out of contract. Your entire safety, core is gone, all 4 of them, unless you re-sign. So the team will look different, but there's an exciting core that they're going to build around, which in my mind includes Ben Johnson. You already lost a position coach, but who cares when you got the guy at the top, and he's going to be here a while in a stable role.
Can we just touch on that for a second, though?
Sure.
Eric Bieniemy is rumored to be going back to the Kansas City Chiefs.
I thought it was official.
I haven't seen that it's official.
Okay, my bad.
Let's say it even is official, because it's as official as it can be, even if it's not official. And Matt Nagy hasn't been hired anywhere as the head coach. So what are they doing?
He's out of contract.
Is he out of contract? Is that what it is? Okay. Yeah. All right. I was just like, what is this? No. He's out of weird timing.
But I mean, they must have said to him, we don't plan on re-signing you if they're looking to promote someone to his role, or hire someone into his role. So
yeah, that part was a key part that I did not pick up on.
I believe so. I could look into it.
So later. It's similar to the Brian Flores situation up in Minnesota, who is also out of contract and probably not coming back as the DC, and now interviewing.
Good news for the Bears.
That's yes, good news and they've already seen Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator, leave from the Green Bay Packers, is now being hired to the Miami Dolphins. We've seen how great that it works out for.
Always a good job.
Yeah, especially for Packers coordinators, going anywhere. So, all right, I got nothing else other than please go to the comment section. I want to hear from you. Give us a 1-sentence review. I know other people do 3-word reviews. I don't want to copy. So everyone give us a 1-sentence review, just a 1-sentence review of what this season was for you, what it meant for you, how excited you were, how excited you are for the future. That's what we want to hear about. This is what this show is about. We're going to continue to build up this community, and we are moving on. 2026, guys, 2026. Until then, this is going to remain Bear Down, Claws Up.
As after Packers all